My name is Brittany Park, and we live in Denver, Colorado. This is my husband, Robert, and we have two boys diagnosed at birth. Grayson is 3, and Drew was diagnosed after he passed away. Our journey to a final diagnosis took a really long time, almost a decade. Our first son, Drew, was only diagnosed after he started having complications. In 2011, he was born and was not picked up on the newborn screen. He started having feeding difficulties. He was sleeping all the time. We had a lot of concerns. We brought those concerns to our doctor, but they generally tended to brush them off. When he was 2 months old, he suffered a massive seizure, stopped breathing, and was taken by ambulance to the emergency room. And that was where he was misdiagnosed with acid reflux first, and we were sent home. And it was just a few days later that he had a second seizure, and same thing, stopped breathing, and the ambulance came. And that was when the EMT told us, your son is having seizures. It was the first time anyone had said that to us, and because seizures look differently in babies than they do in adults. It's hard to tell it's a seizure. And so we called his pediatrician and stayed on the phone with her until she agreed to directly admit him to the hospital. And they kind of put us in a back room, and they didn't put an IV in. No one really checked in on us. And the next morning, Drew had another major seizure, encoded, stopped breathing. But since they didn't put an IV in, they had no way to give him any anti-seizure medicine. So he had about a 15-minute seizure. And people started to finally say, oh, something is seriously wrong here, and we need to figure it out. So he was in the pediatric ICU for about 3 weeks. And in that time, he had an MRI, which showed severe brain atrophy. He had several spinal taps. His methionine and homocysteine. His methionine was very low, and his homocysteine was over 250. And when we finally got medication for him, his metabolites normalized, but all the damage that had been done to his brain was too much for him to sustain life. He was put on a ventilator, and even with the ventilator, he was struggling to live. And we had to make the decision that no parent wants to make. And we didn't want him to live a life hooked up to machines. And he passed away at 3.5 months old. We received his official Cobalamin G diagnosis after our second son, Grayson, was born. We knew Drew had homocystinuria with a Cobalamin defect. They just didn't know genetically which form it was. And so we tested our children for the known genetic mutations that we had. And based on those genetic tests, we would, follow the children closely after birth. For Grayson, when I was pregnant, he tested having the same genetic mutations as our son Drew. And so I delivered him at the Children's Hospital in Colorado. And the genetic team went right to work. And at day 1, they did all of his metabolites, realized he had already very elevated homocysteine, and they enrolled us in a fantastic clinical trial at Brady's Children's Hospital in San Diego. And so they sent blood samples and did a rapid genome sequencing. And so within 3 days, that question we had for 10 years was finally answered. We were given the diagnosis of Cobalamin G. Taking care of a child with a rare disease every day is terrifying, because it's already terrifying when you have a baby because you take care of them and their life is your responsibility. But there's an added measure of anxiety and fear for them. There's not a lot of research telling us how things are going to turn out, and so it's a lot of questions. But it also is incredibly rewarding to see this beautiful little boy born and continue to beat all odds he's ever been given. And you change to a new normal. and our family has created a new normal, and that's just, it's our normal now, and we're okay with that. His current treatment, he takes all of his medication orally 4 times a day. There's 3 different supplements he takes orally, and he takes it 4 times a day. We break it up so that it makes it a little bit easier for him to take the high doses. He also has a B12 injection every day. Yeah, so giving a small child an injection is tricky because we've always wanted to make it a positive experience, not traumatic, because this is something he has to do for his entire life, and we don't want him to fear it or to not want it. And so we've had to use lots of kind of tricks to help him learn about why he has to get the injection. When he was a baby, it was a little bit easier because we could do it and he didn't really even know what was happening. As he got older, we kind of had to do a lot of teamwork because, you know, Robert would hold Grayson and I would talk to him or read him a book and then do the shot. And now that he's older, he's starting to really understand that he needs it every day, and he can do it with me, just me giving it to him. Like, no one has to hold him anymore, and he understands you know, that it'll be quick and be over soon, and he's learned to do it a lot better. My biggest concern for Grayson is his future. We don't know what that's going to look like. And even though he has treatments that are available to him, there's no data showing it's actually going to keep him from progressing long term with eye issues, his heart, his kidneys, liver. You know, and our biggest concern is, what is his future going to look like? Because we don't really know. I hope he's happy. I really do. I hope he's happy. And whatever it is that he's able to do, I just want him to have a happy life and have joy. I hope for Cobalamin G families that they can find a community that we can unite together and really support each other through our lives, because when you have a child with a rare disease, a rare diagnosis, it's isolating and lonely because, you know, the friends you've had for years, they don't understand what it's like. And so when you find this community, it's welcoming, and it really helps you feel less alone. If I had one message to communicate to other families with Cobalamin G, it would be that even though we have medication that we know does help some, that our journey can't end there, that we need to continue advocating for better treatments, we need to continue advocating for support and understanding for this disorder, that there's a lot that can still be done to help our kids.